Gentlemen, thank you again. Secretary Munson, it's a pleasure to serve with you on the Broadband Development Authority. You wear a lot of hats, not just budget secretary. How many boards and commissions do you also serve on?
I think the list they sent
That's
me
a
was,
lot.
it's at least 21, I think I noticed at some point, and I was just recently appointed to be on SIRS as well, so I got some bonus ones too.
Well, we're grateful for those many hats that you wear. I want to go back and follow up on your response to Senator Vogel. I know that you indicated, and previously the Secretary of DEP indicated, that any potential revenue booked from RGGI would not impact this budget. It would go directly into that Clean Air Fund. But the reality is it's a tax. Now, they tried to say that it's a cap and trade, but it really functions as a tax. I think what we understand is it's still money coming out of the same wallets of the hard-working taxpayers of this Commonwealth. So no one has been able to explain to this committee or to the Environmental Resources and Energy Committee under what statutory authority this agreement and the administration can collect and spend these funds through the Clean Air Fund. Can you share with us what that statutory authority is for the governor to impose this tax?
I believe some of that's involved in the lawsuit, so I'm going to decline to comment on it specifically. And then in terms of how funds would be spent out of the Clean Air Fund, Clean Air Fund is a legislatively approved fund which has its own regulations and requirements for how funds are spent out of it.
So, but we can't discuss, because it's currently being litigated, how the money is actually going to be taken from the taxpayer and put into that Clean Air Fund by the administration. Is that correct?
Yeah, I can't even comment on that characterization of it.
So no one can explain the who, what, why, where, when, and how of this tax. Who will levy the tax, who will collect the tax, where the tax will be remitted to, and then how that tax goes into the Clean Air Fund for the legislature to use its discretion and push those funds out to projects. Can you explain any of that to us? Because quite frankly, I think the comment that I used with the acting DEP secretary was, well, that was about as clear as the Mississippi River after a hurricane. It was pretty muddy. And how do I go back home and explain that to the people who are probably going to be asked to pay an energy tax, which I will tell you is a regressive tax that hits those who can least afford to pay it the most?
So again, I'm not the best person to talk about that issue at this point. I think, whatever comes out of the working group, I know the working group includes representatives from labor, industry, environmental groups, consumer advocates, with some
Consumer advocates, businesses upon whom this tax will be levied, or we don't know who actually the tax will be levied on, right?
Correct.
So who else is on this working group?
I don't actually have the names. I just know it includes representatives of those areas. The working group does not fall under my purview. It really is focused on the environmental aspects, as well as kind of waiting to see what happens with litigation and what can move forward, how can move forward, et cetera. So probably the folks you already had in here were the best to speak to it. And I know that the governor has pledged to, as the working group develops recommendations around this, how things would work. And I think it's fair to ask how things will be explained in a transparent way, which I do think is a fair request, that he intends to have constructive dialogue with members of the legislature from both parties about how we would move forward.
Well, I recognize that you are in the unenviable position of batting cleanup for this team. but truly was hoping that we could find more clarity around something that is really going to impact the hardworking taxpayers that we represent back home. And we'll look forward to getting more information so that we can explain how this tax will come to be, what that statutory authority is, and exactly how this is all going to work. So thank you very much, Secretary.